Brother Leroy.
Yes, sir.
Let's go. I'm gonna play the music
Okay,
again.
just
You
give
ready?
me the countdown, brother.
Okay, we ready. Let's play the music again.
You can fade out after he
Okay.
goes when he goes into yodel.
All right, later. The real pleasure in life to be devoted to and always stand by me, so I'd be unafraid and free. If there was ever a man who was generous, gracious, and good, that was my dad, the man. Yeah.
And this is the Wisdom Table coming to you from the Grand Houses in Harlem, USA. I'm Brother Leroy, co-hosting on this segment of the Wisdom Table. Thankful to the Most High for blessing us with another day on this good earth, another day to do some good for ourselves, for our families, for humanity, and thankful that we have the opportunity to have guests who we will introduce you to in just a half a minute. This program does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, deeds, or any other proclivities of the management of this NYCHA development, Grand Houses in Harlem. Neither do the views expressed here reflect on the resident council. However, the program does reflect the research done by the participants in the program live in living color in studio sometimes and most often by Zoom. We're very happy to have a brother who we felt is demonstrative of the Leon Thomas Love Supreme. He has demonstrated in our experience, our observation, the love for his people. He's a defender of the people. He reflects the grassroots whims and interests of the grassroots. And he and his wife have stood up for Black people in the New York State Assembly and the New York City Council when others have been quiet, running under their desks, running out to lunch in the evening time to avoid key votes. We're talking about Brother Charles Barron of Brooklyn, USA. God bless you, dear brother.
Well, God bless you, Brother Leroy, and thank you so much. And I do represent my wife as well, my queen, Inez Barron, who's doing such an incredible and remarkable job in the City Council and in our beloved East New York and Canarsie, East Flatbush, Brownsville communities that we represent. So thank you, Brother Leroy, for having me on.
And we have a range of questions in general, anything that, is top secret. You can say, hey, we'll wait for another interview on that. But we're going to start with COVID from the standpoint of stimulus monies, emergency monies, and that sort of thing that has happened early in 2020 and possibly about to happen here in 2021 or the end of 2020. And that stimulus monies coming in, people, the average person say, all right, I'm gonna get me a check. But there are other monies that have come in and no bid, that sort of thing. Please share some light on what we have been able to experience in terms of infusion of dollars into Black businesses and institutions, or we have been blocked from those things based on your knowledge.
First of all, let me start from a macro perspective. And we must always remember, never forget, as we strategize, organize, as we use knowledge to impart upon our people, that we live in a colonial capitalist system with a warmongering foreign policy of imperialism and an ideology of racism that permeates every institution into the minds of many people, particularly white people. We should never, ever forget that that's the context in which we're operating in. And in that context, we also should never forget that capitalism didn't develop because of the genius of Adam Smith, who wrote Wealth of Nations, or any other economist philosophy. But capitalism flourished because of the theft of the land from the indigenous people who are now on reservations, and the theft of African people from the continent who was dispersed all over the world to build capitalism, to save Europe from its destruction economically. And us here in America, the African people who call ourselves Black, sometimes African Americans, but we should never forget that we are owed reparations for what they've done to our ancestors and continue to do to us today. So let's put this COVID thing in that context. So when people talk about pre-existing conditions of health, we have to start with the pre-existing condition of colonial capitalism that creates. We often organize around symptoms and not the deeply rooted illness. But this colonial capitalism creates poverty, creates unemployment, creates mass incarceration, creates miseducation, creates inadequate healthcare and healthcare we cannot afford. It creates all of these social problems for us. And then because of that pre-economic and political condition, then we have high blood pressure, diabetes, upper respiratory disease, heart diseases. Then we have those illnesses that make us vulnerable to the COVID virus. So if we really want to be healthy, then we got to dismantle this racist, parasitic, predatory, colonial capitalist system and be able to have a more socialistic, a more African communalistic, a more egalitarian society where the wealth of the nation benefits the masses and not a few at the top. So let's get to New York and its response to the COVID crisis. New York became the epicenter. It became the state that was most affected. Now, just think, New York was the epicenter, but we don't have the greatest population. California does. So how does New York become the epicenter? And how does Governor Cuomo, have the mitigated gall, the audacity to write a book on how greatly he responded to the coronavirus? What a hypocrite. This man was the governor of the state that had the worst stats on it, especially for Black and brown people. And here in his state, he had an executive order saying that the nursing homes had to take COVID patients. And that caused death. He should be arrested. Somebody should make a citizen's arrest for that alone. Then, on top of that, we were fighting upstate. We were fighting the city. And there's fighting the Mayor de Blasio. I'm fighting Cuomo. I'm fighting the so-called Black elected officials that are going along with Cuomo and going along with the ideas he had and the policies he had. We're fighting with them to say, wait a minute, show the statistics so that the world can know, so that the country can know, so that the state can know, so that the city can know that those people who are dying most from COVID is Black and Latina people. We're dying most. We didn't need the statistic, we already knew, but for those of you who need social statistics, they finally provided them. You would think once they provided that we would get the prioritization of the resources. No. Once we find out we were dying most and affected most and getting hit hardest economically, Black businesses and everything, where did all of the treatment go? Not treatment, but the resources go? Well, they brought in a ship that had 1,000 beds on it. Where did it go? To the white community, dying less. They converted the Javits Center, turned it into a hospital. beds they didn't even use on the Ship or the Javits Center in the white community.
That's right.
Central Park turned it
That's
into
right.
a medical facility in the white community. But when it came to my beloved East New York and Harlem and Bed-Stuy and Brownsville and places in Queens and the Bronx, we had to fight just to get PPE, personal protective equipment. We had to fight to get ventilators for our hospitals. We had to fight to get testing facilities in our neighborhoods. We had to fight for masks. We had to fight for tons of sanitizer. We had to fight for every little thing. And to the credit of my beloved Queen and our beloved East New York, she fought so hard, and we together made the state use St. Paul's Community Baptist Church with Reverend Brawley, the pastor, as a testing center, and the Christian Cultural Center with Reverend A.R. Bernard as the pastor as a testing center. And we also got them to turn pink houses into a testing center, public development. So this had to happen because this governor is a hypocrite. Now, we get to the budget now. We're saying, all right, now we understand we're getting hit worse. What does this governor do? Cuts $2.5 billion from Medicaid. Medicaid, that's what poor people need. During a pandemic, you're going to cut $2.5 billion from Medicaid and have the nerve to cut $400 million from hospitals during the pandemic. That's what this $170 billion plus budget did. $400 million from hospitals. Then he rolled back the bail reform that we put in place the year before. That's a law to give judges less discretion in putting us to jail, because that attributed to mass incarceration, and the COVID virus in jail is causing the death of our people who are incarcerated, and we are disproportionately incarcerated. So now he has the nerve to roll that back and give the judges more discretion to not give us bail and put us in jail. The best judge we ever had in the history of New York State was Judge Bruce Wright, who said he was not going to impose bail because bail, as a constitutional amendment, bail is for those who are a threat not to show up to court, not to punish you, to keep you in jail. He rolled that back. Then we had $400 million in capital money for NYCHA to deal with the boilers during the winter, to deal with the roofs and deal with a whole lot of stuff. And $4 million is pittance, but he cut that out. The $4 million, $100 million from NYCHA. And then worse yet, he decided that he wasn't going to do a revenue package. Now, Brother Leroy, I've been in this business of politics for 12 years in the city council, now 6 years in the state assembly. Never do you have a budget without a revenue package, without taxing the rich, without some kind of increase in revenue, so you don't have an austerity budget where you're cutting everything to balance it. During this crisis, you don't have a revenue package, and you run the nonsense that you don't want to do one from the state because you may not get what you need from the feds, because they would say you already took care of it on a state level. But who are you trying to get stuff from? Donald Trump? Really? Donald Trump? That's why you didn't do revenue? You didn't do revenue because you didn't want to tax the rich. There are rich people that can afford a 5% increase on their $1 million, a 7% increase on their $5 million, a 8, 9, 10% increase on their $10 million. That would have given us billions. Brother Leroy, there's a stock transfer tax on Wall Street that is in place, and it produces $14 billion for 2, 3, 4, 5 cents on the transfer of those millions of stocks $14 billion, and you rebate it all back to Wall Street. We said, hey, you got an $8 billion deficit, a $10 billion deficit between the millionaire's tax and the stock transfer tax. You can kill that deficit without cutting the program. Matter of fact, there's about $50 billion worth of revenue generating taxation that'll go to the wealthiest who can afford it. They're not leaving New York, and those who leave, more will come. They're not going to shut down the stock market because you tax in the stock market. They're not doing that. There's too much money, too many contracts in New York for them to leave it and abandon it. This is what this governor did. Now, I can't put it all on him. Brother Leroy, we elect Black people to represent us. We elect Black people in leadership positions not to be about rugged individualism, personal ambition, and distorted delusions of grandeur, like you got some real power, and you don't. But collectively, Brother Leroy, we do. When you think of the three persons in the room that are voting or coming up with this budget, the governor, the head of the assembly, and the head of the Senate, right? Governor has no votes on the budget. The head of the assembly has 1 vote on the budget, and the head of the Senate has 1 vote on the budget. So who has the power? It's 150 members of the assembly and 63 members of the state Senate. Who has the real power? The members do, but they kowtow to the governor and they kowtow to speakers. And those, we want to give accolades to the 17 of us who didn't vote for that budget. But to the others, shame on you. Shame on you. And I also want to give accolades to those of us who, during the fact that you mentioned, Brother Leroy, we did get money from the feds or for stimulus money. Trump gave Cuomo $50 billion in stimulus money. We wanted $1 billion of that for rent relief. So the people that are unemployed and having problems with rent won't be evicted. We'd have money for them to pay the rent. $1 billion we asked for. You know what the governor offered? $50 million out of the $5 billion. Brother Leroy, $50 million. We pitched a fit. The head of the assembly said, how about $500 million? We were very upset at that, but we said, okay, let's do the $500 million. We'll keep fighting. But time it got to a bill, the assembly and its leader, Carl Hastie, was offering $100 million. $100 million, Brother Leroy. And as you and I speak, when that was finally passed, they still didn't give out 60 million of it during this crisis. This was passed in April. They only gave out 40 million to millions of people in the state that are going to be unemployed and can't pay rent and will be evicted at the end of the moratorium. We're going to keep extending it, but still, you're not paying the rent. You just extended the debt. So when it's all over, they're going to still have that all back rent to pay and be evicted. So this is what's happening in Albany. So I said, let's not vote for this housing bill. And you know what, Brother Leroy? We were able to successfully, I sit on the housing committee. So we were able to successfully get the committee to vote the bill down. You know what Carl Hastie did? A Black man. He took the bill out of our committee because we had the votes, and he put it in the Ways and Means Committee where he had the vote. And that's how it got passed. That kind of stuff, I would never vote for him again. And that's why he and I got in our little conflict, because I'm not voting for him. Let me tell you about Black leadership, Brother Leroy, and I'll stop. I just had to get all my stuff out.
Well, Brother Charles Barron, that was bordering on my next question. So we deal it telepathically. Please go ahead with Negro leadership.
Thank you. Let me tell you about Black leadership. Martin Luther King said something powerful in 67. He said, the white power structure creates these black leaders, gives them prestigious positions and resources so that they can maintain control over them to perpetuate, this is my addition, this capitalist, racist, parasitic system. And once they go along, they get these prestigious positions and these resources. Martin Luther King said the black masses are rightfully angry at them because they are, and these are his words and so suitable, manufactured leaders. Manufactured leaders of the white power structure. Because we live in domestic colonies of colonial capitalism. You know how the colony is when an outsider is controlling everything, and they're the minorities, and the majority of the people in African countries. Kwame Nkrumah wrote an excellent book, Sajifo Kwame Nkrumah, Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. That's what we're suffering from, a form of domestic neo-colonialism, because capitalism is dying. So what they do is they'll put black people in front of it now who are espousing the same policies with a black face. You can be president, you can be a vice president, you can be in Congress, you can be in the state assembly, city councils, but as long as you espouse the white power structure's will to control the domestic colonies called black communities. So when you look at most of our black communities, you have a bunch of black elected officials, but we don't own the land. We don't own the businesses. We don't own the hospital, healthcare service. We don't own the police, for sure. We don't own the school system. We don't own the means of production. That's all controlled by people outside of our community. That's why we are a colony. So to keep the colony under the control of the white power structure, they put black faces in high places. That doesn't mean black power. Matter of fact, they change what I call colonial administrators in America. So the American system is a colonial capitalist system. So if you rise up and create too much heat, they'll give you a neo-colonial black administrator in Washington called Barack Obama. And if whites get too angry at them giving you a black neo-colonial administration, they'll give you a neo-fascist, racist administration called Donald Trump. And if those two things ain't working for the domestic colonial capitalist system, then they'll give you a neoliberal / conservative colonial administrator called Joe Biden. But the bottom line, all of them support imperialistic wars abroad, whether they're in Afghanistan or Iraq. All of them support, and Barack Obama, under his administration, we had about 4 or 5 military bases. America, not we. America had 4 or 5 military bases in Africa. After Barack left, it was 50, called AFRICOM. Under Barack Obama's administration, 8 years, the first 2 years, Democrats controlled the House, Democrats controlled the Senate, and we had a black president, a black U.S. Attorney General, Eric Holder, for 2 years. And for 8 years, we had the black president and the black head of the Justice Department. Not one police officer was indicted by the Justice Department of Eric Holder and Barack Obama for the murder of black people, not the murder of Michael Brown and Ferguson, not the murder of Trayvon Martin in Florida, not Tamir Rice, the little baby who had the toy gun, and I can name so many more. He did nothing for 8 years with a black U.S. attorney. The only thing they did about police brutality is to have his little bourgeois friend, Skip Gates, who was disrespected in his house by a police officer. He had both of them come to Washington to have some beer. That was his contribution to police brutality. So when you look at that situation, and let's bring it home. Now we're in New York, a domestic colony, the Black communities are, of colonial capitalism. So what do they do in New York? Check this out, Brother Leroy. Head of the assembly, Carl Hastie, Black man. The majority leader in the assembly, Crystal People Stokes, a Black woman. The head of the Senate in Albany, Andrea Stewart Cousins, a Black woman. Attorney General of the state, Letitia James, a Black woman. The public advocate of New York City, Jumaane Williams, a Black man. The majority leader in the New York City Council, Lori Cumbo, a Black woman. The head of the largest Democratic organization in the country, Kings County, Rodnice Bouchette, a Black woman. Ahead of the Democratic Party in Manhattan, a Black man, Keith Wright. Ahead of the Democratic Party in Queens, a Black man, Gregory Meeks. Ahead of the Democratic Party in the Bronx, a Black man, Brother Jamal, Senator. Ahead of the Borough of Queens, a Black man, Donovan Richards.
You're tuned in to GHCR.NYC, Grant Houses Community Radio.
Ahead of the Borough of Brooklyn, a Black man, Eric Adams. Ahead of 1199, a Black man. Ahead of 32BJ, a Black man, Unions. Ahead of DC 37, a Black Latino. Come on now, all of that. Why do we have 30% poverty in Harlem and East New York? Why do we have mass incarceration? And why do we have gentrification? Lori Cumbo and them are complaining about the gentrifiers who beat them and beat the machine in a district in Brooklyn, the 57. You said these gentrifiers, it's the gentrifiers for you who let them in. You gentrified your neighborhood. I sat next to council members and told them, don't vote for this project. It's 80% market. The area median income is how you gentrify. If the AMI of this project is for those making 100,000 or more, which is 80% of them are, and the 20% has to make 60, 70, and 80,000, and your neighborhood AMI is 30, 40,000, you're going to be gentrified. So don't call it affordable housing. Define affordable, not affordable to us. That's how our neighborhoods get gentrified. Robert Carnegie allowed his neighborhood to be gentrified. And then he writes on the ground in front of Restoration, Black Lives Matter. I feel like getting some paint, a white paint, and say, white lives matter, because that's what you let in.
Brother Charles Barron, need you to hit, for the audience, affordable housing. Explain that from your own experience.
Let me break that down for you. Whenever they tell you we're building affordable housing, your question should be affordable to who? And how will you determine affordability? When I first got into city council in 2002, when I was sworn in my first year, a rich white developer came into my office and said, council member, I'm going to build 120 units of affordable housing in your neighborhood. And I said, affordable to who? How are you defining affordability? He said to me that HUD defines affordability as 80% of New York City's AMI, area median income. So I said to him, do you know what New York City's AMI is? At that time, it was $86,000 for a family of three. He said, no. I said, well, let me tell you what it is. It's $86,000 for a family of three. Do you know what 80% of that is? At that time, it's $64,000 for a family of three. He said, oh. So I said, do you know my neighborhood, East New York, AMI? He said, no. I said, this meeting is terminated. He said, why? I said, you insulted my intelligence. You came in here and told me you're building affordable housing for my neighborhood. You don't even know what our neighborhood AMI is. You go find out and we'll reschedule this meeting. He looked on his thing and said, oh, I got it. No. This meeting's terminated. I made him wait 3 weeks because I can. He came back. I said, no, what's my neighborhood AMI? He said, $36,000. I said, now let me tell you what it's going to be, or this project is dead. I said, the income band of East New York is that 80% of us make less than $50,000. 50% of us make $36,000 or less. So 50% of your units is going to be at that income rate. And another 20% of your units is going to be 50,000 to 40. Then there's another 10% of us that make 50 to 70,000. And you can include that. And then there's like 5% of us that make more than 80,000. That's what it's going to be. And that will maintain affordability and maintain us as a Black community. You got that, brother? I didn't say brother, buddy. You know? And so he laughed. You know, I ain't calling him no, he ain't my brother. So I said, you got that, buddy? And you know what? That's exactly what we got. And I wanted to break that down. So any of you, when they say they're building affordability, ask them what the AMI is, the area median income. If it's HUD, okay, you're in trouble.
Okay, look, how come you the only one that know that?
Oh, if they don't, they shouldn't be in office. And if they do, then they're hustling for themselves. And they're not working for the community. Because, you know, what I did in East New York, what we did, Inez and I, we have over 12,000 units of housing came in since we've been in there in 2002, for 17, 18 years. Do you know, Brother Leroy, not one apartment is market rate. Not one. We make sure of that. And when I first came in, East New York was 67% Black. Now it's 76% Black. It was, the Daily News doesn't even like me. And they had to say, East New York is the only neighborhood that experienced a 13.2 increase in the Black community. And I didn't do it, Leroy, but it used to be 8% white. Now it's 3% white. They left on their own, Brother Leroy. I didn't kick them out. They voluntarily left. And it's about 20% Latina. That's like 90+% Black and brown. That's what my district is. Harlem lost at least 14% of its Black community, or 12%, and an increase of 400% in the white community. Bed-Stuy lost 16% of its Black community and an increase of 600% in the white community. Crown Heights lost 11% of its Black community and an increase of about 200% in the white community. Why?
Damn.
Not only the income, you also have to deal with the rent. For a 1-bedroom apartment in many of my beloved East New York developments, it's only $700, $800 a month. For a 2-bedroom, it's $900 to $1,100 a month. For a 3-bedroom apartment, it's like $1,100 to $1,200 a month. For a studio, it's $500 a month. And we make sure the studio is not 300 square feet, it's about 450 plus. So it's big enough. You go to Bed-Stuy, if you get a single room, it's $900. A studio is $2,500. Not in my beloved East New York. That's why they're coming to East New York, no matter what the crime is and all that stuff. Look, I can't afford to go anywhere else.
The model, who has come to you for your model? I asked the question, who has come to you? And I'm saying who from the standpoint of council people, assembly people, etc., to say, hey man, how did you do that? And they subsequently went and did it.
I've had a couple of people that have come. Diana Richardson, we spoke about it, and one or two other people. And Diana Richardson's in Brooklyn. And we spoke about affordability. A few others, I spoke to them about it, but they did nothing about it. They still went along to get along. They didn't want to go against the speaker. They didn't want to go against the mayor. They didn't want to go against the governor. And so what they do is they're looking for things in their neighborhood. I'll give you another example of power. See, there's a difference between power and influence. When you have to protest, scream, holler to get people in power to make decisions in your best interest, that's influence. Even if you win and they make the right decision for you. When you can make that decision yourself or with your little committee, that's power. So in East New York, if Donald Trump would have come to East New York and said he wants to build Trump Towers on Alabama Avenue, he has to come see the Black Panther city council member because he doesn't have the power, and neither does the mayor have the power to give him that property. The city council does. Now, if I say no, the 7 members of the subcommittee of land use, if it's a rezoning, the zoning committee, are going to support me. Now they can, if Trump says, I'll give you all $1 million each, they can say, Charles, sorry. But that doesn't happen. It's always deferred. There's deference to the local council member. So when a land use project comes to the land use committee, the chair will call up and say, council member, what is your wishes? If I say no, it's dead. If I say yes, based upon these modifications, it goes through. That's power. So how the hell do you not do that, Black leaders? When you have that kind of power, why wouldn't you use it to maintain our population in our communities? That's all they have to do. Say no. And it's dead. I'll give you another example. We have too many homeless shelters in our district. So there was this homeless shelter that went 4 square blocks, 2 stories high on each block, and a courtyard in the middle, a lot of property, 200 homeless people in there. The shelter is raggedy, run down. So Mario Cuomo's sister, Maria Cuomo, who heads up Help Homes, Inc., who builds shelters and so-called affordable housing in districts across the city. We made it affordable in ours. They meet with us and say, you know what? That shelter is not fit for them to be living in. So we want to knock it down. And instead of using all of that property to build another shelter, we want to build 300 units of housing and let the shelter, instead of 4 square blocks, be 10 stories high, and it'll be brand new. I said, and my wife said, well, first of all, you shouldn't be able to build anything if you have a shelter that's not fit for us to live in. You shouldn't be building nothing else. That's number one. Number two, we would never support you building a 10-story shelter. So they went away. They got the mayor. The project went into the land use committee, the subcommittee for the zoning change. The mayor calls my wife up, Inez, and says, Inez, I need to meet with you. I need to talk to you about that project. She said, I'll get Charles on the phone and we'll meet. No. He said, I'll come to East New York. I'll meet with y'all in his office. The mayor, that people can't get the mayor to do it. He came to East New York, met in my office with my staff and Inez's, and said, I need this project. I need y'all to pass this. What do you want for your community? What do you need? We said, yo, we don't roll like that. We're not for sale. If you have anything to give our community, you should do that anyway. We're not for sale. We ain't building no new shelter. He then said, well, you're either going to leave this dilapidated shelter as it is, or at least you get 300 units of affordable housing the way you all like affordability, and they get a brand new shelter. No, here's our idea. We'll sign off on a plan like this, not 300, 500 units of housing. and put those 200 people in a shelter in a permanent apartment with rent subsidies. He went away and said, well, it's either you're going to do this project like we want it, or it's going to remain like it is. We said, see ya. That was Friday. He went back and tried to call the 7 members of the committee to go against us. They wouldn't do it. On Monday, my wife gets a call and say, hey, I don't know how you'll do it, but there's going to be 500 units of housing and the homeless people will get 200 of them. Come on, Brother Leroy. Come on, Brother Leroy. Why can't we all do that?
That's right.
Why can't we all do that, Brother Leroy? We ain't nobody special. I mean, we're bad. Don't get me wrong. We don't play, but we ain't special. Anybody can do that.
Let me stop you there. And it's not stop. What is it that's missing? We guys like myself, we tend to cast names on people, you know, chicken head, whatever the thing is. But what is it in your experience as a Black man, in your wife's experience as a Black woman, Black family, that enables you to take a stand like that?
Well, first of all, we come out of the movement, Brother Leroy. We're not politicians. We are elected revolutionaries. We are using the electoral process as a tactic to do 2 things: raise revolutionary consciousness and awareness amongst our people about this predatory colonial capitalist system, its racist ideology that permeates its institutions, and its warmongering imperialistic foreign policy, and how local politics, because we're revolutionaries, but we know in the meantime, pending the revolution, we got to deal with getting stuff for our people. So what we decided to do was not be put into office by the machine. We decided to beat the machine. You know, the problem in New York is that there's but so many ways you can get elected. You're either gonna have the county bosses and the Democratic Party machine, which is white led and Black front, put you in. They'll do fundraising. They'll collect petitions for you to get on the ballot. They'll give you lawyers. That way, they'll knock your opponent off the ballot. They'll do all of that stuff to get you elected. If not them, then you got to look at the Working Families Party, whose top echelon, even though they put more Blacks out there now in the front, but their main people are Bob Masters, Dan Canton, and Bill Lipton, 3 white men. And then they put others in there to make it look like they have diversity. Or the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, who is now winning elections and beating the machine. Their top echelon people are white, even though they front some Black people. Or the unions, and the unions go either way. They can go for you with the machine or go against you, you know, with DSA or with the Working Families Party. There is no independent, Black-led, radical electoral movement to get candidates like Inez and I in the political offices of city council and state assembly. All politics are local, and that's where the real power is. So we lack that. So judges, elected officials, they have to get to one of these sources in order to win. We didn't. We started Operation Power. That's our organization. Operation Power, people organizing for and working for empowerment and respect. That's the acronym, Operation Power. We went up against the political party's machine in East New York. Every Black community, including Harlem, they have a Black-led Democratic political club. And that club can get Donald Duck to beat you because they know how to do door-to-door mailings, fundraising, and all of the tricks of the trade to win elections. And we learned that. And we beat the local council member in 2001. It was an open seat because of term limits. We went to the tenant leaders in the public housing. We went to the block association leaders. We went to the barbershops, the beauty salons. We went to the local grassroots organizations. We went to the church leaders, and we won. Then we won the state assembly in 2008. Then we won the male and female leadership, district leaders. We won that. We won the county committee seats. We won the local civil court judge, and we took over the community board. Andre Mitchell, we community board. We wiped out the Democratic Club in East New York. It does not exist anymore. That was our biggest challenge. Now they're trying to revive it. Hakeem Jeffries is trying to run these other folk against us that we keep beating. So they're trying to still get us. Other Democrats have an attitude if they have a primary. That's how they punish each other. Oh, you didn't vote right? We're going to give you a primary. We get primaries all the time because we're independent. That's how we beat them. Hard work. It's not because we're articulate or have some charisma or some radical revolutionary agenda. Hard work. We outworked them. We won issues. Before I got elected, they tried to bring in a environmentally hazardous wood burning incinerator. We beat them back. They tried to take out the fire boxes in East New York because there were too many false alarms. We beat them back. They had coal-fired furnaces in our school. We beat them back. Got gas or whatever they're using now. Police brutality. We organized. They didn't call elected officials. They called us. Jobs. They called us. And then they told us, since y'all doing all the work, why don't y'all run? It went from the East New York United Front to Operation Power. And when we got in, we did not disappoint. They told me, Charles, to get in, you got to put on a shirt and tie to go to the state assembly. You know, that was the biggest issue for me when I was going to the state assembly, because I don't wear shirts and ties. And that was the decorum of the state assembly. The media was all over the place. You know, they made a big issue over that. And I said, I'm not putting on a shirt and tie. And the media said, well, why not? I said, because I'm not European, I'm African. Just that, you were born in Africa? I said, no, you stole me from Africa and brought me here. And I'm an African. And I don't wear shirts and ties. And you know those collarless suits I wear, like exactly like Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere and them would wear. And I said, that's the dress of the East. And even in India, the Nehru suits, and then Mao Tse-tung in China, that's the people of the East. I don't wear shirts and ties. I never have and never will. Well, that's a decorum. I said, well, tell them to call the police because I'm coming to sit down in my seat. You know, they had a whole meeting, said, we're not going to have Charles do this because that's his cultural dress, and that's fine. They backed up.
Now, going back to Harlem, how much aware are you that Harlem has been, the congressional Harlem has been zoned all the way up into Riverdale, New York?
Well, what they did to Harlem was a shame. Adam Clayton Powell, you remember how he became the first Black congressman from New York State to go to the House of Representatives, because him and others, they redrew the lines. 1/3 of Harlem was in 3 different white communities. So Black people never had any representation. Adam and them redrew the lines to put those each third into one district, a Black district. And it was 80-90% Black, and he won in 1944. Since then, they've been redrawing lines. The way they take Black people out of power, even if they are Blacks that are not really committed to us, is to redraw the line. So now Harlem is like 27% Black, and it's more whites and more Latinos. So when Esbiat ran against Keith Wright, I knew Keith was going to lose because of the way the lines were drawn. It's more.
My observation, Brother Charles, is that, and it's not that I've looked at the Dominicans as Esplanade,
Right.
that they have preserved a white district up on the west side by cutting the Dominican population into Harlem.
Right.
That and diluting Harlem further by running it all the way up into the Bronx, into Riverdale.
Exactly.
Which is when you look at this thing, you say, well, how could the leaders, the political people in Harlem
allow that to go down?
Allow that without telling the people, hey, they're trying to jack us.
Right.
I'm
That's where the battle was supposed to be, Brother Leroy, and redrawing the lines. They tried to redraw my lines and take me out. And I said, that ain't happening. I went out there and pitched a fit. It's all about getting a pencil and drawing yourself back in. You know, that's what they do. They sit down and they see there's a couple of ways they're going to disempower even those blacks that are neo-colonial puppets for them. They even want them out.
That's right.
So they'll do it through redistricting, through gentrification, and voter suppression. That's what they're doing.
When you see voter suppression in the local area, which we know, I'm saying we know in quotes, is true, because when Obama ran against Hillary Clinton, talking about that first, he got virtually no votes in Harlem, and that was impossible.
Right.
I mean, it was, you know, I said, this is impossible. Not with Black Harlem, even though the guy, you know,
right.
So voter suppression, how does that manifest at the local area?
Well, you know, it can manifest many different ways by who is on and off the voter rolls. So when they start taking people off the rolls and saying, oh, they either passed away or they moved out of the district or they hadn't voted in 10 years or whatever.
Okay.
That's one way that they can do that. And then when they used to have the machine and they didn't have these paper ballots and these new machineries, remember you used to have to pull the lever?
Yeah.
Right. What they would do, this is how the Democratic Party stays in power in our district. And they could suppress or corruptly damage voting democracy, because the district leaders hire all of the election day workers. There are 300 election day workers that can make $500-600 for the 2 elections.
Mm-hmm.
And illegally, and I've wrote about this, but nobody's gonna, you know, say, yeah, Charles is right. They did give me $600 and make me do this. But illegally, the Democratic Party, this is how they stay in power. The Democratic Club has 2 district leaders, male and female. These district leaders hire 300 workers. They tell the workers, for you to work on election day, you have to join our club, pay a club dues, and you have to get 3 pages of petitions for our candidates. That's illegal. So if Brother Leroy is running against the machine, he's going to have to run against those 300 people that are in the polling site on election day and who already got 3 petitions for your opponent and had to pay a $50, $60 club dues for the Democratic Club that's against you. That's what you have to go against. That's what I beat. What I did is I got to some of them and said, hey, y'all, you know, I know they're giving you all the money and all of that. Hey, but do the right thing and vote for Barron. Take their money and vote for me anyway. All right, Brother Barron, I ain't got no problems with that. Because see, they don't have no loyalty when you're doing things for money. We don't pay people to do petitions. We say you do it because you believe in us. And the only thing we pay is on election day, we'll pay election day workers because some of our people need the money and we have it in our campaign coffers. We don't pay people to do petitions. You better do it because you believe in us. And if you don't believe in us, go on the other side.
Okay, I want to go quickly to the methods when we as consumers see a vote taking place in the Assembly or the Senate or the City Council, and we're looking for a vote that represents the needs of the Black community, whatever that issue might be, and it doesn't go that way. What are the means that they use to nullify the fact that the City Council is majority Black? And I use that to include Blacks who speak Spanish, Creole, etc. How does that work in some cases? How do they get the vote to go against their own people?
Well, easily. When I was there, the City Council has 51 council members, 51. There were 14 Blacks, 11 Latinas, that was 25, and 2 Asians, that was 27. So there were 27 Black, Latinas, and Asians, 27, and 24 whites. That group had the majority. We had a Black, Latino, and Asian caucus of 27. The speaker, first Gifford Miller, then Christine Quinn, when I was there, has a pot of money and has the power to assign you to an office, a big one or a small one, has the power at that time to determine how much money your staff, you was going to get for staffing, has the power to determine how much capital money for big projects.
Grant houses, community radio, the soul of the Upper West Side.
And this is the Grand Houses independent radio station, and the program is the Wisdom Table. Our guest in Zoom is Brother Charles Barron of the New York State Assembly. Please continue.
So then the speaker has the power to determine how much capital money you're going to get for parks, schools, and libraries and bigger projects, how much expense money you're going to get for programs. The speaker has the power to assign you to committees and assign you chairs of committees. And the speaker has the power to determine whether your bill is going to live or die. So then the speaker, with all that power, how you voting, Brother Leroy? And the speaker also has a leadership team. The speaker chooses a majority leader. When I was in there, you get a Lulu for that. All the chairs would get extra money, 10,000, 20,000 extra for being a chair or a majority leader or a deputy majority leader. So the speaker then creates their leadership team, and they create these titles, meaningless titles, powerless titles. Deputy majority leader, majority leader, deputy to the deputy to the deputy to the assistant. You know, they create these positions to give these Blacks and Latinos and Latinas these positions to keep them under their control. So now the speaker sets that up.
Those positions carry extra money.
Yeah, they used to. I think they may have taken the Lulus away now. I'm not sure, but they did when I was there.
Okay, go ahead, please.
And so the speaker now knows that, hey, I got the Black, Latino, and Asian caucus because a good number of them are on my leadership team. And they make you a part of the budget negotiating team, ahead of your borough delegation, all of that is outside the Black, Latino, and Asian caucus. So by the time you get to a vote, the speaker has control over the caucus and controls the vote. So when I first came into the city council, I came in with 36 new council members, because that was in 2002 when they first instituted term limits. We started the Fresh Democracy Council. Before I got into the city electoral politics, I had a company called Dynamics of Leadership, a leadership training company. I used to go across the country and visiting in college campuses, and I trained over 100,000 people in the years I was doing that. So they used to meet in my office, Bill de Blasio, Margarita Lopez, Simca Felder, you know, Yvette Clark, you know, all of these folks that are in positions now, Gail Brewer, all of them met in my office, and we said we need rule changes. This was the first time that the race for city council speaker went outside of the city council, because that's a council vote. And we had forums on it, and we made them make commitments and all of this stuff. So the speaker has too much power and influence over the vote. Because if you say no to the speaker and you're in the doghouse with the speaker, you're not going to get certain monies for your area, and you're not going to get your bills passed. That's why I have most of the bills that I'm so supportive of, I'm a co-sponsor, because it's hard for me to be a prime sponsor and fighting the way I fight. So I co-sponsor bills, and I vote for the most progressive bills, and sometimes I'm the stronger advocate for a bill as a co-sponsor than the prime sponsor is. So that's how I got my legislation stuff through, by being a co-sponsor. Something like, you know, I mean, hundreds of pieces of positive legislation. But the direct answer to your question is that the speaker and the governor and the mayor, they have budgets too, to give you good stuff for your neighborhood, or your personal agenda, or fundraising for your position. Nobody's gonna, but the Barrons is gonna buck the speaker, the governor, the mayor, and do the right thing for the people.
Okay, going quickly back into COVID, touching on a number of things. There are some proposed bills, at least in the assembly, that I'm aware of, don't have the number, to make the vaccinations mandatory, and the vaccinations, based on the information that is available to the public, the vaccination that they have out here are experimental. They've never been done before, with the latching on to the DNA of the person being so-called inoculated. So the issue is mandatory as opposed to, you know, doing it on your own term. What is the position that you might have on that?
Definitely against mandatory vaccination. I was against the mandatory vaccination of the measles, and we had that defeated. And the speaker, once again, came into the meeting, talked one of our assembly members, we only was up by one vote, to change his vote, and they wound up winning that one. I'm against mandatory vaccination.
Okay.
Hold on.
And
secondly, okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Secondly, they said that this vaccination, to prove its safety, would take 5 to 6 years.
Go ahead.
They came up with a political vaccination in 9 years and 9 months.
Yes, sir.
And then we live in a greedy capitalist society, and Pfizer couldn't be more greedy, and they're more about profits than they are about health. So when they say they have a vaccine that, number one, will not stop you from getting the disease, it'll stop you from getting sick. And so you could take the vaccination and you'll be asymptomatical, but you can still have it. This is according to the doctors, not Charles Barron.
Correct.
And you can still transmit it. So they want everybody to take it so that everybody just won't get sick. Now, the long range after effects of that is suspect to me. You know, so when I see that one nurse took the vaccination on TV and fainted. It was on TV, and they was promoting her as, see, she's getting it. She fainted. There were people that said they had high temperatures, but it went away after a while. It's 95%, you know, safe, they say, and all of that. So I'm saying to my people, consult your physician, do your research, and make an intelligent decision. I'm not taking it. Take no vaccines. I think Minister Louis Farrakhan has a point. I think people should study it. And the Nation of Islam has produced some books on vaccinations. I've read other books. We've already had the Tuskegee, you know, experiment on syphilis. We've had the experiment with HIV/AIDS was suspect, and the Ebola virus was suspect. And all of these things, we have to be very careful to see what the immediate and the long range effect is going to have. Even the vaccination on measles, there's a lot of parents that will swear on their parents' grave that once they gave them that measles vaccine, they had childhood autism. And then of course, all studies will say that's not true, and you can go back and forth with studies. I don't take vaccinations. I am not telling anybody else not to take it because I don't want to be responsible for your health. You consult your physician.
Exactly.
You research the science on it, and you make a logical and intelligent decision for yourself.
Okay, and just going into the last, you've covered a number of areas that we had planned to ask you about, and you are one of the few who mentioned how COVID patients were put into the nursing homes, and talk about that end result.
Oh, that was disastrous. We died, period. We died. There's nobody more vulnerable to the coronavirus than those in nursing homes, the elderly. People literally died until we pushed back on the governor, and he finally changed the executive order and said they can go into the hospital. He was saying that the hospitals were so crowded that the nursing home should share. And you know, come on, are you serious?
Okay, there is a therapy that Trump got and that Giuliani took. Giuliani butched this off, we understand, and that is, it's called antibody serum. Antibody serum.
Right.
How familiar are you with that as it relates to the people who have it, are sick in the hospital, and put on ventilators and their lungs are punctured as a result, etc. But this antibody serum is being used quietly throughout the country.
Correct.
Led by one Mayo Clinic, but it's more than Mayo Clinic with that initiative. The point is that there are people dying today. Even Kane, the brother who is Godfellow, or come on, the Republican, the black guy, his name was Kane.
The pizza.
Yeah, Godfellow. Anyway, I don't eat pizza, so I don't know the name.
He rests in peace regardless of his politics. You know?
Yeah, he died. And the thing is that this serum is available.
Right. Well, with that, all this vaccination does is produce antibodies for you. Matter of fact, they say a small portion of the vaccine is COVID. And it produces antibodies. You know, I had it, right?
Yeah.
And when I was in there, they tried to give me all kinds of stuff, and then when I came out and I got my blood checked and all of that and tested, I was negative, and I had antibodies. Now, that's the whole. And I heard Dr. Fauci just yesterday said, don't get on Trump for not taking the vaccination yet, because he had what you mentioned, the antibody serum. And we don't know how that antibody serum mixes with the vaccine. So he's not taking it because he's not sure what will happen to him once those two get together. So if it's not good for Trump, who has antibodies, then how are you going to say Dr. Fauci is good for everybody else to take it? Who many people had it and have antibodies, and the antibodies, you don't know whether they're gone now, and you don't know whether there's a new strand out there and it doesn't meet that strand. You know, it's just so much unknown. So the antibodies, we have to be careful. If you take the vaccination and you have antibodies, Dr. Fauci himself said that could be a problem. So,
okay. I'm just moving in terms of your time, what we got you to commit to, and that is when we talk about a Charles Barron and we hear this interview, we're hearing the interview of what people would call a maverick. To get for his community, he has to fight, he has to do ninja warfare, etc. Who are examples in the white community who do get things for their community and don't have to do that?
Well, most of them don't have to do what we have to do, and they automatically get things, and they don't get things because they're a white community and it's just given to them. They didn't have to fight for the ship of 1,000 beds to come into the white community. Cuomo just gave it to them. They didn't have to fight for, you know, the Javits Center to be turned into a hospital almost. That wasn't no battle. They just did it. See, we have to say, it's racist, give us some. We have to say we're black nationalists, black power. They don't have to say white power. They just do white power. They don't have to have a white history month. They just do white history every month. They don't have to fight for justice. They just have white justice. You know, Hillary Clinton and all of them, they're white nationalists. They believe in whites getting everything. And then they'll give us some little crumbs. You know, there's a little expressions they have. I heard Hakeem Jeffries foolishly say that he's a compassionate capitalist. You know, there's predatory capitalism and compassionate capitalism. What an oxymoron. There's no such thing. Those two terms can't go together. Capitalism is a blood-sucking, exploitative, predatory system. And what he's talking about is what Malcolm talked about, the difference between the fox and the wolf. And the wolf of capitalism is the predator. Shows his fangs, you can see the growl, you can see it, and you know he's gonna bite you. Donald Trump, predatory capitalist. The fox has fangs, is gonna bite you pretty deeply as well, but has a smile and is a compassionate capitalism. So what is compassionate capitalism? It's when you still support domestic colonialism, you still support the rich at the top, you still support imperialistic wars, you still support all of the poverty in our neighborhoods that capitalism produces, mass incarceration, what's her name? Clinton called us predators, and Biden and Clinton, Bill, did the crime bill that put us in jail. But the compassionate part, they'll give you food stamps.
Oh,
they want you to have a little more welfare.
Gotcha.
Oh, they'll give you a little more, a tiny bit of affordable housing. Or they'll make sure that they have a workforce development program for you. Or they'll make sure that you have the Affordable Care Act. So more of you can get health care, even though the health care will be privatized into private insurance companies that are lapping their way to the bank, whether it's Trump Care or Obamacare. Both of them is privatizing it. They won't support a single payer healthcare system, Medicare for all, free healthcare, as they have in many African countries, as they have in Venezuela and Cuba and England and Canada. They won't support that. But compassionately, They give you Medicaid, Medicare, a little bit, because we're compassionate. You don't want to dismantle this racist, parasitic, colonial capitalist system that is inherently, fatally flawed to humanity, but you want to reform it or pack it up with a little food stamps and things here. And I'm not down on food stamps. If you can get food stamps, by all means, get them.
Yes.
If you can get welfare, get it, but don't get a welfare mentality.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Brother Barron, in our next session, when we have it, based on your schedule, I'd like to talk about leadership training, how that's done in the white communities, how it's not done in our communities, but could be done in our communities.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking at the political leaders being able to train staff or hire staff and on-the-job training, that sort of thing, leadership training. The last thing is this: there are no bid contracts that go to mega conglomerates in the city, no bid contracts. And this radio station that you're on right now, Grand Houses Community Radio, is an independent radio station put up by some enterprising brothers who train young people under them to do what they do in terms of technology. And they don't get contracts. They get them by way of the resident councils in housing developments who have a budget from HUD to do certain discretionary spending.
Right.
And the point is, if we get contracts the way the conglomerates get contracts from the city and the state, there are jobs awaiting those kind of opportunities that are not being realized when they go to the conglomerates. Your comment, and that will be the conclusion of our interview.
Well, that's correct. Contracts is the name of the game for the power brokers of capitalism. And you ever wonder why Michael Bloomberg, who came into City Hall worth $5 billion and left worth over $20 billion, and now he's upwards to 30, 40 billion, whatever he is. You ever wonder why he would want to be mayor of New York and take $1 for his salary? Contracts. When I was in the city council, there was a huge multi-billion-dollar contract budget that the private sector benefited from. So if I'm mayor and Brother Leroy has a food vending company and he's my man, I'm gonna say, Brother Leroy, the city is gonna give you a multi-million-dollar contract to provide breakfast and lunch for the 1.1 million children in the education system. Leroy is a millionaire. If Brother Shaka has a toilet paper company, so Brother Shaka, this is Mayor Barron, listen, we need toilet paper for all of the public facilities, our thousands of schools, our government buildings. I need you to supply the toilet paper on a regular. Brother Shaka is a millionaire. Another brother has a transportation company, buses, millionaire, transport our children. There are thousands of contracts that are meted out to private rich folk that make billions of dollars off the state and the city. That's what they do. Some of them are no bid contracts. Some of them you have to give to the lowest bidder. But even if you give it to the lowest bidder, Brother Leroy, you can't bid but so low because you got to pay people. Whereas the big corporations, they can bid lower than you because they got enough capital and access to capital. So it's all about contracts. I remember one year I told the mayor, Bloomberg, I said, Mayor Bloomberg, you know, it's a lot of crime in our community, and we need to build two-story state-of-the-art community centers to get our youth off the streets and into athletics and into developing CDs for music and into karate and into culinary arts and into intellectual things, writing books or whatever in this community center and make it modern, you know, latest stuff. And he said, well, how you going to pay for that? I said, well, it would cost about $20 million. And I figured if we do one in each borough and in the neediest Black and Latino community, that would be about $100 million. He said, how you going to pay for it? Because he's arrogant. He thinks he's the only one who knows things. So I said, well, Mayor, if you turn to page 63, I don't remember the page, 63, you will see under the capital budget that you have $163 million for trees. I'm down with trees, Mayor. But we can take $100 million from there so that we can develop our human trees, called our youth. Oh, that's not going to happen. So then I come back. You don't determine that because you don't even have a vote on the budget. I turn to my colleagues. Let's vote for it. You know, hell with the mayor. Let's vote for it. Of course, he was right. It's not going to happen because they're not going to vote against it. So these are things that could happen with contracts. And I must say, years later, I have a $12 million, two-story, state-of-the-art community center in my beloved East New York. I would love you to come visit it one time. We named it after Prince Joshua. Remember that 7-year-old boy that was stabbed to death in the elevator by a crazed man who was neglected?
Yeah, he was
health.
with his sister or
right.
cousin.
She survived it. So we named it. It's right across the street where he used to live in the Boulevard houses. We named it after him. And after 18 years in elected office, we have 5 renovated parks, Inez and I, for over $40 million, the best parks in the city. We have a youth center. We have 3 new $80 million plus schools that were built in our neighborhood. We have a new library coming into our neighborhood. And we have 12,000 units of affordable housing as we define affordability. And we got some Black developers to be the general contractor, not these minority and women's and business-owned contracts. We got them to be general contracts, own the land, own the project because of the militancy and the assertiveness and the boldness of Inez Barron and Charles Barron.
Brother Charles Barron, love supreme. Many, many blessings on you and your family. Thank you very much for your valuable time. And may God continue to bless you, bless us with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, patience and tolerance, and fearlessness.
Well, thank you, Brother Leroy. And we humbly appreciate when you have us on your program and your boldness to have us on and to give us the praises that you do. This ain't easy.
God bless you, brother.
God bless. Stay safe, man.
Thank you, brother. And ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, this has been a session, one of our diamond sessions with Brother Charles Barron of East New York, good brother from way back. Brother Wayne, the original communicator, was a brother in the Nation of Islam. He made his transition in January 2002. But Charles Barron, when he was a young boy, and Brother Wayne Grice, Wayne 3X Grice was going door to door with Muhammad Speaks. He used to engage in debates with Brother Wayne.
That's right.
And Brother Wayne shared that with me. Brother Wayne, a real pioneer in communication, and he's sorely missed. So my brother, thank you once again for being you, and thanks to your parents, brother, and the surrounding environment for creating a fearless brother like yourself.
Right.
You operate like Hannibal going over the Gibraltar Straits. You could not go back. You couldn't go back.
God bless my mother. She's 95 years old and strong and healthy. And Inez's mother is pushing 98 and strong and still hanging in there with us. And Brother Wayne Grice, I'll never forget him. He was so precious in my life. Thank you for mentioning him.
Thank you, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And Brother Doug, thank you. We're going out with either Love Supreme or the main ingredients, whichever one you select. Thank you very much for your work. And may God bless the listening audience and pass this particular link around and gain more listeners and students for what we had today.
A human being so true, he could live like a king cause he knew.
You're tuned in to GHCR, Grant House's Community Radio, home of the Community News Service.
To be devoted to and always stand by me, so I'd be unafraid and free. If there was ever a man who was generous, gracious, and good, that was my dad, the man. Yeah.